Hi, I'm Sharon Pederson, and I'm here to share another tip with you. This one involves my wonderful new collection of Aurifil Sashiko weight threads. These are my lovely 12 weight threads, and I was playing with the threads, looking at how they appear on the fabric, and I made this cute little design. And it was too cute just to throw away. You know, when you're doing samples, sometimes you just grab any old scrap of fabric and make it. But this time, it was so cute, I decided I would put some borders on it and it would make a nice little wall hanging. But I was testing my Sashiko stitching through a quilt sandwich. So how do you put a border on an already quilted quilt? So this is a wonderful technique that was taught to me by a student when I was teaching in New Braunfels, Texas. Her name is Terry. And Terry showed me how to do this, and she also gave me permission to share it with my students and my friends. So thanks, Terry from Texas. So here we have another similar little sample, and I've decided that I'm going to put a border on this, and because it's already quilted, you have to put a border on the back as well. So I've chosen this wonderful Asian-inspired fabric to go with my Sashiko block. And I've decided that my border is going to be 2 inches finished, so I cut strips 2.5 inches wide. So you're going to cut strips for the top and strips for the bottom. And you line up the top border, line it up with the raw edge, right sides together, of course, and directly underneath, also right sides together, you're going to line up the bottom border or the back border, and with your regular 1/4 inch seam, you're going to sew both pieces of the border to the block at the same time. Now, the temptation, of course, is to open it up and press it, because that's often what we do. But before you do that, you are first going to take a piece of batting. I usually cut them a little bit bigger than necessary, and we are going to stitch this to the seam allowance using a stitch called the serpentine stitch or the lycra stitch. Depending on the brand of your sewing machine, the name may change. And it's a simple stitch that zigzags out, but it isn't a zigzag stitch. So let me just get it started here. There we go. And you can see, or will be able to see in a minute, that what this is doing is stitching the edge of the batting just to the seam allowance. So it doesn't interfere with the quilt top at all, because it won't ever be visible. It is being stitched just to the seam allowance. So let me get this out of here. Now I will trim this off, so grab a ruler. We're going to trim flush with the top and the bottom. Okay, now what I have here is I have stitched the batting just to the seam allowance. It has not interfered in any way with the body of the quilt. And then what I'll do is flip this over and finger press. Same thing on the other side. Flip and finger press. All right. And I would then repeat the same thing on this side. Now, this is going to require quilting, but I'm not going to quilt it until I get all 4 of the borders on. So my next step would be to baste right up against the edge. So we do side A, then side B. I would sew my batting on here. I would then flip that open and baste. Then I would add the remaining 2 borders. So this is what it looks like when you get them all sewn on. So you can see here, just like I did with the little sample, here's the lycra stitch. It stitches out like this. Okay, it is not a zigzag. So I've sewn the batting just to the seam allowance, flip and finger press, turn it over, make sure you finger press the other side as well. And the reason I finger press instead of pressing with an iron is because the batting is in here. If you put the iron on it, you flatten the bat. That's no good. Okay, so the next step would be to baste all the way around and then quilt your border, bind it as you would normally, and ta-da! You have added a border to an already quilted block. And of course you can do the same thing to a quilt, can't you? So when your grandchild grows out of the small bed into the slightly larger bed, instead of having to make a whole new quilt, you just have to take the binding off the old quilt, put a new border on it, making it the 6 inches bigger it has to be or whatever, quilt that, put a new binding on, and ta-da, a big enough quilt. I hope you enjoyed that.